Let's start modeling by outlining the main shape. I'll take our cube here, hit tab and go to edit mode. And first things first, let's just make the notch here at the top. But I think the height is actually a little bit off first, so let's just take our top face, I'll box select that, and I would like to use the move gizmo sometimes, so I'll go over to my gizmos options and turn on the move gizmo. So I could go to the move tool, but I like to use that and the box select at the same time. So I'll just move that down. And then this one I'll move up a little bit, just to the main part of the body. And I'm going to add some new loops here, but I don't want them running all the way down because that'll interfere with the little bite that we have to cut in just a second. So I'll go ahead and just delete the top and bottom faces. I'll hit 3 to go to face select mode, select the bottom and the top, and then hit delete and faces. Now when I add an edge loop, I can just add it to this one specific area. So I'll go to top view here, and I want to add 2 edge loops for this notch. So I'll hit Control R, and we can't actually see this, unfortunately, because we're in face select mode and the edges are just invisible from top view. So I could go over to 1 to vertex select mode, Control R, and that way it'll sort of show up, but it's still kind of hard to see. But I'll just make 2 cuts there by scrolling up on my mouse wheel once, or we could go to the redo panel and set that to 2. And then I'll hit S and then X and just scale this up along the X axis till it meets those areas. And then hit E to extrude, Y to bring this down along the Y axis. And there we go. But now we have some extra faces here that we don't need. So I'll go back to face select mode, select the bottom and the top face of that extrusion, and hit delete and faces again. So now we have that notch. Next, let's go ahead and bevel these corners. I'll go to vertex select mode again and box select these vertices. Again, I'm box selecting instead of just single clicking to select, because I want to make sure that I'm selecting both the top and the bottom. So left click and drag to select, shift left click and drag to also select these vertices. Then for the bevel, I'll hit Control and B, pull this out, and then scroll up on the mouse wheel to give this a few more vertices. Now that didn't bevel it very evenly, and that's because our scale is off. So I'll hit Control Z to undo that, hit tab to go to object mode, and if we go to our object properties, you'll notice our scale is not 111. And so as we mentioned in the basics course, that is going to mess up some of our edit mode operations. So I'll hit Control A and apply scale. Now if I hit tab to go into edit mode again, and hit Control B, it'll bevel much more nicely. So I'll pull this a little bit past the original bevel, because it's going to start curving inwards right away. And I don't really want that, so I'll take this shape and just push it out a little bit. So I'm kind of overshooting and then pushing it out, and that gives us a bit of a nicer shape. I'll set this to 6 segments, and I think that works quite well. Next, we can do the same thing with this big corner down here, just with more vertices. I'll box select both of those vertices at the bottom, hit Control B to bevel, and then I'll overshoot the ends just a little bit, and then use the shape to help define exactly where that curve should lie. Then I'll increase the segments till it's a lot more smooth. Let's still keep it relatively low poly though, so I'll set it to 12. We don't want to go too overboard. Next, let's make this bite cutout. We need a couple more vertices here, one to define both of these points. So I'll add one more edge loop to the side, hit Control R, hover over this top edge, left click to confirm, and then slide this over a bit. And then from top view, I'll just move this along the y-axis until it lines up with that point. Then I'll take this edge down here and move this along the x-axis. Now we just need to add in a few more edge loops to define these bites. So to add 2 more, I'll hit Control R while hovering over this edge, scroll up on my mouse wheel, and left click to confirm. So even though I couldn't really see that, I still knew what I was doing. But if it hasn't gotten into your muscle memory yet, you can always do that from perspective and then jump back into top view. So now let's take this edge, or both of these vertices, and put them over on that little bite mark. And take both of these and put them on that edge as well. Now I'm just going to continue doing this to flesh out the shape a little bit more. I know this is kind of manual labor in a way, and you might think that there's a quick and easy way to do this all at once, and there are a few shortcuts that we could do, but when I tried them out, they all took about the same amount of time as doing it by hand. So I'll just hit Control R to add in an edge loop, pull that in, and do that over here as well. Control R, add an edge loop, pull that in, and we can add more vertices pretty quickly just by shift box selecting all of these and hitting Control B to bevel until we have about the number of vertices that we want. Let's go with something like that. That's about 5. And now we just need to move these into place. So I'll box select them first, pull them in, and just move them in by hand. Again, be sure to select the top and bottom vertices by just box selecting. Otherwise, if you just select once, then you'll just miss, and we'll get that sort of situation. Okay, this one we might want to pull down along the y-axis just a little bit. Let's pull that out. And let's do the same thing down here. Let's pull this out along the x, just so we have a little bit more room to work with. And it's really nice that we have this schematic here that was made by our concept artist, Paul, and it's really helpful in just lining everything up as we go. If I'm working and I don't have a schematic, sometimes I'll just add extra objects in the background to line things up with just as references. So instead of using an image, maybe I'll just add a temporary circle to place here and try to line everything else up with that. Okay, once everything is tweaked the way that you want it, and it's lined up pretty well with the top of our game device, then we're ready to continue on. Next, let's outline this notch here at the top. Similarly to what we did before, I'll hit Control R, scroll up once on my mouse wheel, because I know that inserts to, left click to confirm, and then hit Enter right away, and then just hit S and X and scale that in to go to the extremes there. And then again, Control R, place another edge loop, Enter to confirm, G to pull that down, Control B to bevel, and scroll the mouse wheel until we have just the right number of vertices. In this case, let's do 5 again. I'll pull that down, and then just massage these into place. Now I'm finding it kind of hard to see my vertices on top of my line work here, so let's lower the opacity of our reference images. I'll go down to our references, go to our reference for top view, and let's go to object mode here. Click on that again so we can actually switch to that object. Go down to the empty properties and turn on opacity and turn that down quite a bit. So maybe about 0.2 should be fine. And now we can see our vertices a little bit better. Now I'll just copy and paste this value to all of the other objects as well. So I'll hover over this number input and hit Control C, and then just move up my references, turn on opacity, and then hit Control V while hovering over. So we don't have to actually click into this. We can just hover over it, hit Control V, and paste that value. Okay, that should be a little bit easier to work with. I'll hit Tab to go into edit mode again, and now we can actually see where our vertices are quite a bit better. Here I'll adjust them so that they're lining up a little bit more with the outside part of the line work rather than the inside, but that's up to you. Okay, now that I'm looking at these corners here, I think we might need a couple more vertices just along this edge here, because it's looking a little bit low poly in comparison with everything else. So let's hit Control B, and actually let's just shift select both of these, Control B to bevel, and let's scroll all the way down until we just have one split there. And move that into place if we need to. Okay, there we go. Again, we're going to keep things reasonably low poly, but I'd like the corners at least to be smooth. And then now that we can actually see our vertices here a bit better, we might need to tweak some of these. A lot of modeling is just tweaking vertices, and as a modeler, I could sit here and do this for hours, so I'll try not to do that to you. But just be aware that that is a majority of the job. Alright, now that we have the main body of the device outlined, let's outline some of the buttons as well. For these buttons, we can just add a simple circle. So in edit mode, let's hit Shift A and go to circle. It added mine at 0.1 centimeters. I'm not sure what it'll add yours at or what you added last, but I'll just scale this up until it's roughly the right size, like so. And we can see that we definitely don't need 32 vertices. That's way too high in comparison to everything else that we've done so far. So I'll bump that down to, let's try 16. That seems a little bit low. So I'll turn it up to 18 and let's call that good. Then I'll hit G and move this off to the side. And I'm going to outline the entire button with this. So not just the button itself, but we're also going to have an indent and kind of meets the button. So I'll scale this up so it surrounds the entire thing. and then I'll just hit Shift D and duplicate this over to the other one as well. To make these sort of pill shapes, we can do something pretty similar. I'll hit Shift A and add another circle, but this time I'll bump down the vertices. I would go with 12 because that looks like about the right number, but since we're going to want to pull this out along the x-axis, we need to make sure that we have two vertices that are flat here at the top. So I can either bump this up or down, just until we have some flat sides to work with. I'll bump it down to 10, and that way maybe instead of pulling it along the x-axis, we can just pull it out along the y-axis. So let's move this down here. And I'll scale this down until it's about the right size. Maybe a little bit bigger just to surround the entire thing. Then I'll take the top half, pull it up along the y-axis, then take everything and rotate it into place. Again, we're going to inset this to make the actual button, so I'm kind of overshooting the size just a little bit. I'll hit G and pull that up, right about there, and then I'll take this entire outline, Shift D, X to move it along the x-axis, and duplicate it over for the other one. Next, let's do the D-pad, Shift A, and this time I'll add a plane, move this over, S to scale it up, to right about there, and then I can take, let's see, we want to extrude all of these different sides, but we can't do them all at once. So if we were to try to select both of these sides, it would just select the whole thing, and that's not what we want. So I'll go to 2 to go to edge select mode, and that way I can select two sides at the same time. E to extrude, S to scale, X to go in the X direction, and just scale these out. Then let's do that for the Y direction. Let's take both of these edges, E to extrude, S to scale, Y to go in the Y direction, and pull those up. Perfect. Now we just need to outline the screen and outline the circle. Shift A and add a plane for the screen. Scale that up. Let's move it along the y-axis here. S and Y. And I'm trying not to move it off-axis in the X direction so that I can hit S and X and make sure it scales evenly on both sides. Great, now we just need to bevel those corners. So I'll go to 1 to go to vertex select mode and select all of those vertices. And it looks like something else was selected, so I'll redo that. And then hit Ctrl B to bevel. But remember that the bevel tool initially only works with edges. So we need to check the bottom status bar to look at our shortcuts, and we'll see that V is the hotkey for affecting vertices. So I'll hit V, and now we can bevel those vertices. I'll scroll up on the mouse wheel a couple times and put that into place. It looks like our last value of shape worked pretty well, so I'll leave that at about 0.62-ish. And there we go. Before we finish off, let's just make this last little button up here at the top. Shift A and circle. Let's use a few more than 10. Let's try to keep the detail size reasonably consistent. I'll go to about 14, move this over, and scale it down. And I'll make this just slightly larger than the button itself. Okay. Alright, so let's hit Tab to go into object mode here and look at our work so far. Right now everything's kind of in the middle here at the base of the world. So let's just move our inner parts all the way up to the top. To do that quickly, I'll box select or shift select at least one component on all of our parts, and then select linked. So we could go to select, linked, and linked, or we could just hit the hotkey Ctrl L. Now I want to move these up to be exactly the height of the other vertices, and for that we can use snapping. That's another topic that we introduced in the basics course. So let's go over to our snapping options here and set it to vertex. Now I can drag these up on the z-axis, and then since snapping is currently off, I can hold Control and then hover my mouse over any one of these vertices to snap the height to them. So again, that's moving up and down along the z-axis, holding Control to snap, and then hovering my mouse over where I want to snap it to. Then I can release my mouse, and then release the hotkey. Alright, then I'll hit Tab to go to Object Mode. Let's go to Solid View to see what we have so far. And in the next lesson, we'll go ahead and start filling this in and extruding some of our buttons.